Welcome to the Westside Investors Network, WIN, your community of investing knowledge for growth. This is the Real Estate Professionals Investing Podcast for real estate professionals by real estate professionals. This show is focused on the next step in your career, investing. Thank you for listening. And please, if you like our content, rate us on your podcast provider. Just a quick disclaimer, the views and opinions expressed in this podcast are for educational purposes only and should not be construed as an offer to buy or sell any shares or securities, make or consider any investments, or take any other action. And now, AJ and Chris Shepard.
Our guest speaker for today is a multifamily investment broker at Washington First Properties. He specializes in large portfolio management, development, and investment consulting. Here to talk to us about his journey from starting small to diversifying into condos, development, and multifamily, let's welcome Todd Locker.
All right. Today we've got Todd Locker on with us. Todd is a multifamily investment broker at Washington First Properties. Todd, thanks for coming on the show. If you wouldn't mind, would you tell us a little bit more about yourself and maybe how you got to where you are now?
Well, thanks for having me on, guys. I appreciate it. I've been in real estate for over 35 years now. And I got into it when I was going to a junior college. And then I didn't like selling residential. So I learned quickly that it was easier to go talk to somebody that has a duplex or a triplex. Investors you can go talk to them about their pricing and their investment. They want to talk. And for a homeowner, a young kid at 22, they don't really give you much credibility. So it's just easier to go talk to people and start knowing investment management. And so what I ended up doing is I got into property management because I knew I wanted to own a bunch of property. And so I started managing on the site level for an old couple, and then eventually got into a company called Pinnacle, and then ended up managing more and more units and became a regional portfolio manager from the site level, which I was the first one nationwide that they ever hired, and ended up managing about 10,000 units for them in 3 states. And it was all apartments mostly. There was some commercial, and then there were market rates, tax credit, project-based Section 8. It was everything from, a C class, B class, A class portfolio. So I learned a lot. And then during that time, my family, when I was in college, my father and we ended up buying a triplex together. And he inherited some money. He didn't make a lot of money during his life. He's still alive, but I wasn't making a lot, but I had decent credit. And when his folks died, my grandparents passed away, they left him some money, not a lot, but he was down to like the last 7,000. So I found a triplex for him before I had my license, and we bought that, but I needed to co-sign for him on that. So we bought 3 2-bedroom, 1-bath triplex up in Seattle area for $103,000. And then my brother Chad and I and my other brother Scott, we renovated that over a year, and then we sold it for $205,000 about a year to less than 18 months later. And then my father at the time, he ended up finding one out of the paper, a 14 unit, and they were all mostly 2-bedroom, 1-bath units, large, built in I think 55, a Marble Creek building. And so we did 1031 into that, and then renovated that, my brothers and my father and I, and then we ended up, I think we got that for $489, with that, our equity down, and then the owner carried the contract. And then we were about 2 years in, we were able to get a loan for about maybe, it was $650,000 to $800,000. And so then we were able to take a bunch of money out, and then ended up buying a 6-unit with that. And then my father and my brother Chad renovated that. And then I moved down with Pinnacle. I moved down to Portland to become a regional property manager from Seattle. And then my dad, that's what he lived on for many years. His income from those 20 units, 2 buildings, more than doubled his regular income, from the Bon Marché on the
Yeah. Todd, that sounds pretty similar to AJ and my story. We started with one house, renovated it, refinanced it, and then just kept diving into more and more units. It's pretty awesome that it just works. And I'm pretty impressed with your family's story. So what made you guys decide to buy that triplex, that first one?
All right. So went back, I graduated in 83. So that kind of tells you I'm kind of an old guy, I guess, even though I don't want to admit that. So during that time, remember like Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous was big. They had, I don't even know if you guys remember, the Too Short guys. They were
Todd, we might not have been alive.
And so there was all of this kind of like, you got to buy real estate and here's how to, that was just on the market then. And my mom, at the time, my mom and dad were divorced. My mom, she got into underwriting. She was an underwriter for a mortgage company and then became an auditor and then was way senior, found a lot of fraud and then she spoke at a lot of symposiums and stuff about fraud and underwriting and stuff like that back in like the 90s. And so I had a real big interest in real estate and trying to make it, but I didn't have, you got legal power, you got money power, or you got your knowledge, right? So I didn't have any money. I didn't know the laws very good. So all I could do is, work on my knowledge and then try to maneuver my way in and have some legal power too with things. So, through the years, we just learned. I knew I needed to, break myself in because we didn't have anything to be able to go buy except for that triplex, a minimum down FHA mortgage,
Yeah. And that's interesting. The three legs you were chatting about. So legal power, financial power, and the knowledge. That's kind of the first time that I've heard that. What is it, do you think about legal power? How is that, I guess, a major factor in, a real estate deal? An
So say you're on the real estate, you're the agent, right? You want to get paid, right? So, or you're an investor and you want to get in first position, right? So what do you have to do to get it, to be in that league, to take that legal power? So you made a decision to go buy something or go list a property for somebody, right? But if you go list it back in the olden days, you might not have a very good listing. It might have been a gentleman's handshake. And then at the closing table, you might have had a real listing, but at the closing table, it wasn't written up good enough. And they want to do, they want to decrease your commissions, right? Yet you put the whole deal together for them. And so what do? You had all the knowledge, right? But what do you do now legally to protect your position and your client's position? And it could be an investor or it could be the seller. And so that's all the legal, stuff. So then you can then you have some weight to be able to, force a close or force some better negotiations. But you got to understand all that and know when you can push and when you can't.
That is so interesting. I think that is one area of real estate that is just not discussed very much, in 2022 or even, 2020 and going forward. Like it's more about the sexy value adds, kind of like what you did with your triplex, add value and then sell it for double. And no one is really thinking about, all right, when times get tough, if your contracts aren't dialed, maybe you were a lender on a deal and you didn't get yourself into first position and the property might not sell for more than the loan and the people in second position get hosed. Like we haven't seen that market in 14 years since 2008, 9, 10. So it's definitely a piece of the business that I would say that there are a lot of people who haven't learned too much about it. So thank you for bringing that up.
I think our first, triplex that we bought, it was like a 9.5% loan.
10% loan or a 9.9 cap?
9.5 loan was the interest rate.
Yeah. What was the cap rate on it? Did you calculate out the cap?
No, we did because it was kind of one of the units was vacant and then they were moving out. Like it was tragic. A crackhead with 2 kids. It was just really sad. But.
So as a multifamily broker, how do you handle, I guess you were saying you couldn't really get a cap rate because one of the units was vacant, but almost every multifamily broker is doing a pro forma cap rate with, projected expenses.
Projected market rents.
Yeah, projected rents and then projected expenses.
Yes, that's kind of funny right now. So because I'm a CPM and I manage so much property, and I'm a CCIM, I get into the weeds with management, to get really good, performance. And my rule of thumb is I like to under promise and over deliver, because I don't want to be in a spot where, imagine this, 7 days I get notice of the takeover of 2 buildings, and it's a 1,500 unit portfolio that is, and we're getting 2 of the buildings are about 700 units that's coming down the pipe. Everybody in our company had left, that was going to take over and was pushing, the rents and the caps. So, and then I wasn't going to get any, I had the assistant manager on a 430 unit building. And that was the only staff member that stayed. I had to go get rid of everybody because the company that we were taking it over from ended up putting all their bad employees in. And so I didn't want to take every last, I didn't want to help their HR, by getting rid. They were just going to use this transition to offload. No, we got a job for you, Johnny, but we're selling it, and we won't have one after today. But if the new company wants you, go ahead. But once I kind of interview people over these 7 days, I go, there's only one person to hire. And then what you do too, I like to go do some physical shops of communities. And so I'm going, it was down in Wilsonville at the time, and it was just before Wilsonville was getting, where it is now. They were buying on rents, projected rents, $150 more than what we could get, even with the renovations that they were going to do. And there was 2 buildings. I had one of them, and I had to go to the owner. I'm going, really? You guys, I can't do this, because I had the knowledge now, and I could go to them with valid, you're not going to get that. And then so they go, well, I guess we're not going to do a lot of the renovations right out of the gate. This is going to be more of a long-term, trying to let the market catch up with us. But they were, the other 800 units they bought in other states, they were really, really, really good deals. And they were forced to kind of buy these 2 deals, but they were sold kind of a bill of goods, and, and it's not fun to have those conversations with owners, especially 7 days into that relationship, and you don't want to blow up their deal, but
for sure. But I mean, there's only so much juice you can squeeze.
Yeah. And by having good information, then I could get some information from them about what they really, their big deal was the other buildings, the other 800 units. So that was a home run.
So was this when you were with Pinnacle and
Yes.
managing? And are you doing that now? What are you doing now?
So in 2008, I went on sabbatical because I was working like 60, 80 hours a week, and I've done that for about 16 years. And it was just pure adrenaline because we were bringing on, in my portfolio alone, 1 to 2 buildings a month for almost 2.5, 3 years. And that's just an insane amount of growth. And these were all like 50 plus unit, the 200 unit buildings down in, actually it was in 3 states. So it was just a lot of work, a lot of fun. And then, people were kind of moving up and moving on, and the chemistry kind of changed, and it wasn't fun anymore. So I decided to go on a health break and sabbatical, and I wanted to go on for 2 years. So in 2008, I did that. And it was funny. So that's like 25 years into owning that 6 unit and the 14 unit. And we had already renovated it once. So then I hadn't seen it for about a decade. And so I go, hey, Dad, I'd like to store some stuff in there. And he goes, yeah, it's all cleaned up. It looks good. So I pulled my U-Haul in to go store some stuff in the basement. And this is only 14 units, but it was a slumlord. There was weeds up to my waist. And Dad goes, well, I've been having a hard time kind of renting stuff, because he would go out of town and go on vacations for 3-4 months out of the year. And he was living off the rent, and he wasn't paying attention to the details. And it was a slump. So I got really mad. And then it ended up taking it was 14 units and over 2 tons of stuff to the dump, and had about 35, 40 bicycles that we ended up taking to a nonprofit that shipped him down to Costa Rica. And then he didn't have any money to replace roofs. Insurance, you got to look at all your expenses annually, but he wasn't doing that. He got his insurance rates up to like $14,000, for 14 units. And I'm going, well, that's what I pay for a 64 unit building, and I have better insurance than you. So I got that, saved like $8,000 a year in insurance for him, and then renovated all the units. And then I put a proforma together, for the brokers and what it was doing. And I went and got all the comps and, based on real numbers and what was going on. And everybody comes back, and they were because we wanted to sell at that time, and like around 2010, 11, and they were coming back at, well, they give you a range, and what they thought they could sell it for was $285,000 less than what I thought we could get for it, with just, maybe taking 3 to 6 months to sell them. And I did all the work anyway, so we should at least try to get the higher amount. And then if I'm going to give somebody 150,000 in commissions, that's 300,000. So then I'm going, well, we're going to get this. So I listed. I ended up getting my broker's license, getting it out of ICE in Washington, and I sold them, and we sold it for 285,000 more, saved the commissions, and that's what got us into a 1031 into the 60 units that we have down in Vancouver in the condominium. So we were refinancing when we met at WFG Title.
Yeah.
So you guys bought the triplex in 83?
That's when I graduated. I think it was around 87, 88. Somewhere.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you sold that. And so you came out with an extra 100,000-ish, maybe a little. I mean, you guys did some work on that property, but then you bought the 14 unit.
Yeah.
And so then you guys did a bunch of work to that. And
25 years later, right?
Well, that was right when we got it. So, it had bars. It was like in a kind of considered the bad part of town, but I went to high school in that part of town, and it was really not that bad at all. And a lot of people that lived in that neighborhood, they were like, a couple of white guys coming in. What are you going to do? Well, we're going, we wanted to go, can we take the bars off the windows? I mean, would that scare you already? No, this neighborhood's great, and we're going, well, here's a unit that we're renovating. Would you want to, if we could charge you $250 more, would you move into that? Oh my God, yeah, we don't want to move. This is our neighborhood. And, I retired from the railroad, from the phone company, and I have a really great pension. And, I don't want to buy a house, and we like it here, So I was like, oh yeah, we'll transfer. So we moved about half the people and just cleaning up the building and talking to people about, that wasn't that bad of a neighborhood. I knew the neighborhood, and it was coming up, it wasn't on the decline. So we renovated all that, ended up refinancing that, and then taking that money and buying the 6 unit for free and clear for 300,000. And
so what year did you buy the 14 unit?
That would have been around 89, 90.
Okay. And then you bought the 6 unit maybe a couple years after?
Yeah, it would probably say like 96, 97.
Okay.
Yeah, because, we renovated it, had to season everything. The values went up. The neighborhood was going up. And then my recollection is it's like a 650 to 800. I'm not sure if we got 800 the first time we refinanced it, or that was the second time, but we got around 650. So we netted probably 400,000 off that loan,
What did you guys do with the proceeds?
Those proceeds went to go buy that 6 unit. It was kind of funny. It was this real estate managing company. They ran the 6 unit, all 2 bedrooms and 2 3 bedrooms. And they just ran it into the ground. So it's 4 2-bedroom, 1 bath, and then 3 2-bedroom, 1 bath, and a brick building overlooking Lake Washington and above Leshai. And it's just a cool building. And 300,000, because it was just, they had bad tenant. It was just a wreck, but it had good bones. So then we fixed that up. My brother and my dad did, because in 97, I moved down to Portland. And then they did a really good job and got everything up. And so he bought it for 300,000. On that one, I think he did do an $800,000 mortgage on it, after the renovation and everything.
So you guys bought the 6 unit maybe 7 years later. And then when did you guys buy the portfolio in Vancouver?
All right.
And did you exit the 20 units to buy the portfolio in Vancouver, or did you refinance?
We sold that. So when I said that we were looking for brokers, to list, I ended up listing those 2 buildings, the 6 unit and the 14 unit.
And you guys did the 1031 exchange. So what year did you buy the portfolio in?
That was 2012.
2012, a great time to buy. So, okay. So you bought your first property with $100,000 in 1987.
No, with $7,000 cash.
What? Oh, 7,000 cash.
That was a $7,000.
Okay, 7,000 cash turns into $18 million of real estate in what? 25 years? Or no, maybe it's 30.
Just 30.
35.
Yeah, 35-ish. Yeah.
35 years. But I mean, that's pretty incredible. Like, and so how much equity do you have in it now? I guess that's going to be 45 years later.
Well, so to this day, before we refinance the loan, right?
Yeah. You said it's 20% LTV?
14 to, we have about, just in this deal, we have about $15-16 million worth of it.
So $7,000 turned into $15 million in equity.
Yeah.
And
that doesn't include the cash flow.
Yep. I mean,
and all the tax write-offs that go with that.
Yeah. So that's a pretty neat story. And so just to recap it, you guys bought the triplex in 87 and then sold it and bought a 14 unit around, 90, 91, or maybe 89.
Fix that up for 18 months.
Fixed it and then fixed up the 14 unit and then refinanced that, took the proceeds and bought a 6 unit in 1997 after values went up. And then you sold the portfolio of the 20 units. Did you sell that in 2012?
Yeah, 2012.
So you sold it in 2012 and then you 1031 exchange.
Actually, it was the beginning of 2012. And then we closed on the 1031 exchange for the 60 units that we're in with the land to go build 60 units because that was in a receivership. And that closed in September of 2012.
Wow. And
so this was the one thing that you 1031 into, it was condos with land. And then you could,
because
was it a distressed property kind of?
Yeah, the original declarant lost it in 2000. Basically, he was losing it in 2007, 8 when everything was crashing.
Yeah.
And then he ended up having like an $8.6 million loan on it. And I think Columbia had it at the time. And then when I was calling the CCIM, really good broker, and I was calling him about it. And then my dad and I, we were looking. When we were trying to sell and figure out to do a 1031, we'd probably look at 200 deals. So we were looking from Bellingham all the way down to Salem. And so we did find one building over in Port Angeles. It was an old, a Section 8 bricker that was renovated and cash flowing really nice. One of the partners knew it was a really good deal, so he was able to buy them out. And then we had dibs on a 40 unit that we could have bought for a substantial less. But when we were coming down to Salem to go look at some property, the broker for this, what we bought, called me up and said, hey, I'm going to be getting some people in. The deal flipped again. And so I can show you some units. So we stopped by about 1 o'clock on our way down to Salem. And we looked at the units and they were all like 2-bedroom, 2 baths. 30 of them had never been lived in. They were vacant. And,
wow.
And it was $70,000 a unit. Plus it had the final phase plans and all the infrastructure was there, like water, sewer, transformers, gas, all the harnesses to go build the other 60 units. And those 60 units going to be built outside the HOA. It's not part of it.
Cool. And so
a normal apartment building.
Did you guys sell that land or do you have plans for it?
Because it's really entangled and it's kind of landlocked to the HOA. So, and we have the only office for the site. So it doesn't make sense. So we were going to sell both pieces together. So we renovated, we did like a $23,000 per unit renovations that we got done with at probably, like 2020, right?
Yeah, you guys are just keeping with the same business model.
Yeah, because we were going to build, but then building costs got to be a little bit too much. And then with our current condition of the units and not having everything, really pushed up to the rents that we were going to need for the new building to pencil, we needed to have some proof of concept. And we were having a hard time at that time. Building started getting there was a spike in demand.
Yeah. So that's interesting. Can you tell us kind of, napkin style, your brief analysis on investing the $23,000 per unit? What was your rent on an unrenovated unit?
And I noticed when I was looking through some of your stuff, we can get into some of the details like, in another podcast if you want, and I can show you like all those calculations and things, because I have really good records of that. Cool. But basically, so our rents from 2020 to now, it was about $425 to $450 on average was the increase that we projected to do the renovations. So that justified pretty much the $23,000.
Yeah, 23. So
that's less than a 5-year ROI on that. That's pretty awesome.
And now here's a word from our sponsor.
Get things done while you're on the move. Learn more about working with a virtual assistant through Offsite Professionals. It's a great way to get all the things done that you need to get done. Have freedom in your time and streamline your life by automating your business. Stop spending time on the tasks that you can delegate and start spending more time on your superpower. Call us today at 503-446-3177 or visit our website at offsiteprofessionals.com.
The way that I kind of justify it is just the rule of 20. If you can increase the rent $1, then you get $20 of value at a 5% cap rate. The cap rates are probably going up as interest rates go up, so that's going to get reduced a little bit. But
and then you get a bump. We get a discounted cap rate because we're in an HOA, so there's probably another point that gets reduced. But then maybe it's not as much as a point because the quality of it now. Some people might. And there's some stability in operations. So, maybe it's a half a point, but we get dinged with value. Plus, our NOI is a little bit lower because the expenses are a little bit higher because of, we have to put almost $1,100 per unit per year in reserves. And then, investors are looking at buying those, that usually you figure 150 to 250 in reserves for, capital.
Wait, so can you explain that? Where is that for the HOA? Needing 1,100 in reserves?
Yeah, so in Washington, you have to fund your reserves, and you have a reserve study for HOAs, and those get updated annually. And then once every, I think, 3 years, it has to be a physical inspection. And then they go take a look at all the physical components of the exterior of the property, your roofs, your siding, and then they assign a life to those. And then they assign a cost and then assign kind of a plan of when you need to, it's just kind of a guess. But all that in the machine, in the calculation machine, and then it comes out with, you can either, fully fund your reserves or it's, as needed, or there's like a middle ground. There's 3 ways to fund it. And so we're kind of in the middle and it's about $1,100.
That's, it's good. In the terms of that, the property owners or, the residents of the HOA will know like kind of what they're looking at. And that if somebody's looking at buying, they can ask for those, site inspections and reserve studies and actually put a number to it as opposed to just kind of guessing. So I honestly really like that kind of those rules that Washington has.
Well, the cool thing is, we have a 30-year plan to replace roofs, and we just did the first phase because the units were built over like a 12-year period, 10-year period.
Yeah.
So you don't want to replace everything all at once because that would be kind of a waste of money. So it's kind of a phased approach, but you want everything to have some standards, right? So you do the work on the front end to get all that dialed in, that scope of work. So then in the back end, when new buildings come on, you have your team, you have the scope, and you know what you're doing.
Cool.
So Todd, kind of now that you're to this point, you've got these renovated units, like what's the next plan? Like what's your next step? And then I also wanted to ask too, so I've got 2 questions here.
All right.
The other one is like you've partnered with your family with these particular deals. Have you partnered with any other investors or done any other third-party stuff like that?
I haven't done a lot of third party. I had tons and tons of clients that I would work with, in my property management days. I respect and, we have fun that I would work with, but I try to just kind of do it for us because we're doing really well and want to alleviate as much stress in my life as possible, especially after working 60, 80 hours a week for so many years, So it's and the renovations, one cool thing about that is that was all done with a loan. So truly, all we have done is taken money out and used loans to go invest from that $7,000 investment. So, and then your first question was,
what's next on your plate? I think maybe before the show, you told us, I mean, we met at the escrow office as you were getting a refinance and I was in there for another deal, and we kind of just got to chatting, and, long story short, here we are. But, I guess I'm kind of asking, like, what's the next step for you in your investing career?
So what we want to do is we're ready to go build, and we could actually start building, midsummer. We could start doing the civil work in the next few weeks with these loan proceeds. So we'll take roughly just probably a little bit over 3 million out. And so we want to put about 2 million of that into the build. That will roughly cost around 12. We'll need another $12 million loan. So we're pretty close of being able to do that. And then we already have, once this loan closes, we can fine tune the cost of construction. And then we already have some lenders and brokers that are salivating to get a regular underwritten market rate construction deal going.
Fun.
Have you looked at, I guess, affordable housing options at all?
Yeah, I took, we did take it to, some tax credit people, and it didn't make sense. I asked the housing authority if they wanted to buy both, Vancouver, if they wanted to buy both the build site, and he couldn't understand what the condominium part was. Kind of weird. And I go, that's pretty easy. You go from renting to home ownership. Wouldn't that be wouldn't that meet your goals for helping families and having affordable housing? So they were just kind of short-sighted, and we had this on the market for the units for 13.8, and then the land to go build everything for $1.9 million. And nobody wanted to touch it. They were giving us lowball offers. And when we got the appraisals back, it ends up being, about 17 million for the units. And that doesn't include another $500,000 for the office and all the extra parking that we have. So it's like $17.5 million. And, there was tons of equity on the vine, but people, it's too complicated of a deal. So it wouldn't be smart to split the two sides of it up. So somebody, like having the renovated units, it's kind of a double-edged sword, because that turnkey investor doesn't want to go be a developer, right? Yeah. But then the developer wants more meat and potatoes on the turnkey side. So we were fighting, that, and that was going to be kind of an odd duck. And that's why we had priced it the way it was. But once you go, if we would have pulled out that $9 or $10 million worth of equity after, paying off, fees and just cost of sales and mortgages, we'd end up having, if it would have been close to 10 million. Now we got to go figure out what to go buy. And in this market, to go place that, if you're looking at a $20-25 million piece of property, there's a lot of big investors that have deeper pockets and are a lot more aggressive than we can be. And then what part of the country are you going to be in? And then we can now go control this deal more, even though we probably wanted to move on. With the build, we can get a better return, and we kind of know we won't be over leveraged, and we know the area. So we'll just stay.
Well, awesome. So if I'm hearing you right, you're pulling out money from the units that you have and you're planning on building on that land. Is that kind of, so that's your next move, is like getting that construction going? That's pretty impressive. Like, you go from like real estate investor to small multifamily to larger multifamily, then to condominiums, and now doing development. Like, it just shows the progression of the acquisition of knowledge that you have and your skill set and ability to do those different things. We've staved away from doing development just because we've gone through a couple of them, and it's a larger amount of risk to take, along with just more headaches and more stuff to deal with. But, I commend you on making that leap. There certainly is, as a developer, like more, like what you said, meat and potatoes in the deals.
And we're long-term. Like if we were being a merchant developer, I wouldn't do that,
Yeah, for sure.
It's just, in condominiums, there's no way in heck I would ever build a condominium.
Yeah.
Sell it, I'd rent it for 10 years and then renovate it and then sell it, and you don't have to worry about construction defects and all that. So
Yep. Well, cool.
Yeah.
Well, Todd, we're getting towards the end of our time now, so I'm going to start us off with our last 4 questions. And the first one is, what's one piece of advice you would give to your 25-year-old self?
Sounds kind of funny, probably, because you probably think that we've been aggressive, but I would be more aggressive about buying our own portfolio. I would have managed it better. I would have probably started selling and buying more stuff sooner to build up more. It worked out fine for us, but it could have been, you think about it and you're going, God, woulda, coulda, shoulda. It could have been, so much.
If you'd have just been active for more years.
Instead of worrying about other people's stuff. But, that's kind of a double-edged sword, because I cut my teeth and made mistakes on everybody else's dime, right? Yeah. But I didn't. Part of it, I got a salary or, commissions. I didn't get, they paid me, but I didn't, I made them a lot more money than what anybody else would have probably made them, probably less than some, but I'm sure I'm a good value add for your portfolio. So, it was just better to work for yourself, because no one appreciates you more than you. And then, just start now. I mean, especially we're all in the industry, right? So whether you're, I tell my managers all the time, I go, look, what you do on a little triplex or duplex or even a house, it's the same stuff. You use the same vendors, same maintenance guys. The work that needs to be done.
You've already got all the tools.
You got all the tools. Just take them and use them.
All the cap rates are the same. I mean, the principles are all there. You understand it. Just do it.
Yeah.
That's the message that we're trying to send with this podcast. It's like
you hit it right on the nose.
Yeah. Why didn't we get started earlier?
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. So you guys did that first deal in 87, but did you do anything before that? What was your first entrepreneurial endeavor?
So back when I was 15, before I had a driver's license, I ended up renting some acreage. It was flat, some industrial land that nobody was using. And I talked to the owner, I go, I'll watch it for you. And I get $50 a month rental on acres. And he was just being nice to a kid. And he wanted somebody to kind of be there on his land. And so then I had big logging truckloads of alder and firewood delivered. I started bucking it up and selling it. But I had to hire a guy that's older, like 16, 17, 18, to go help to drive to go deliver the wood. So that was kind of my first, did that for some.
That's cool. Yeah, I like that a lot.
First business checking account. And,
oh, wow.
Somebody.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the first one that I've heard that you've someone's employed someone as a kid. That's awesome. Great experience, working with other people very young. All right. So our next question is, how has your formal and informal training shaped your journey?
So with Pinnacle managed, it was the biggest fee management company in the country. It wasn't the biggest management company because there was the Gray Stars or some of the REITs, like the equities at the time. Pinnacle had about 160,000 units, 180,000 that they were managing, but that was fee management, third-party stuff. They didn't own anything. There was some ownership, but not near what, these REITs have. And so I was the first one manager from the site level to end up becoming regional in the whole company. And they always gave, you need a 4-year degree. I only had a 2-year degree, but I always said, look, I'm going to give you good results. I'm going to be a leader. I want to be a regional and manage multi-sites. And so finally they gave me that opportunity. And then we just started growing my portfolio exponentially. It was huge. And so I was making, decent money. So I didn't get involved in IRM. I became an accredited residential manager, and that was about it. And then I was taking some of the CPM classes because I like the financial calculations, and I like to see how investors, look at things and how banks look at things and price things. And so I started taking some of those classes after I went on sabbatical, and I ended up becoming a CPM. And then the CCIM I wanted to get that designation as well. And so I ended up taking the classes for that while I was on sabbatical. I got both designations. And so that's my more formal. Now, the nice thing about that, so it's really hard for us to get a loan because the 60 units are part of the HOA, right? And we don't control 50% of the HOA. So me having the CPM and the CCIM, they took more credence on my performance that we were talking about, that they weren't poofy numbers, right? And they took my experience level and the designations, and that helped us. If we didn't have that, we probably couldn't have got some of the loans that got us to here. So some of the formal education, it's good, and that they have great resources and all that. It's expensive, but that's what we pay to be a good professional, with continuing education and, always trying to do better and learn more, for our clients and for ourselves. But having the formal side of it really helped cement some of our personal investments, which is kind of
Yep. Well, I drank the IRM Kool-Aid a while ago too. I think I've been a CPM for a little bit. I probably need to get back signed up. I let it lapse a little bit ago, but yeah, it's a great program. And I learned a ton while we kind of were working our way up to buying more properties. So IRM is great. All right. And our final question, what was your biggest mistake and what did you learn?
So the biggest mistake probably in 97, I moved down to Portland. And then for about 2 to 3 years, we were bringing on 1 to 2 apartments a unit or a month managed. We grew that office to about 12,000 units. And that was just an insane amount of work and growth in a short period of time. And we didn't manage it that well. And so, we should have, both as a company, but me personally too, I should have reached out to the company and said, look, this is the plan we need to put in place. But when you're right in the middle of huge growth, you don't realize what you should be doing. You're just trying to, you're always just, growing and getting things right. And
it's hard to see the forest through the trees.
Yeah. And so now, I would have made sure that we move people up, that could be even more than what I did, to go have managers go run 2 or 3, bring like pseudo regionals and then make it so that there's a stepping stone so they could be a true regional, and that would have just been better for the company, would have been better for me. And we probably, wouldn't have stumbled, eventually, so like we did.
That's a great little piece of information.
Yeah, it sounds like having a little bit of organizational planning is what you're talking about, would, taking a step back and evaluating instead of just kind of wading through until you're too burnt out. Is that kind of what I'm hearing?
Yeah, and then, it's like when you're growing, we were taking on everything, right? And then I just kind of did a timeout and said, there's some clients that are really bad. They're tarnishing our reputation, or they're taking, they only got, a little 107 unit building that they've renovated, and they're taking up, 80% of my time. And, I can't, buy paper clips without them asking. And, we have a management agreement. We have a budget that was approved. We have a budget narrative, and, you're just taking, so we got rid of, they asking to do kind of things that were kind of maybe ethically challenging, and, you just don't go there. And we had to give them notice. So, we kind of cleared house that way to go give more time to our really good clients, And so by making sure that, you got a good client portfolio, and then make sure how do you service them effectively. And if you're going to grow, make room for people within your organization that have got you there, right? So they've helped you get to where you are, will help them get to where they want to be too. Grow everybody. When you bring somebody in from the outside that might not have the same management experience, but they might have a 4-year degree, business degree, they're going to have a big learning curve, and where you might have somebody that came up, from the trenches that are just going to be invaluable to you from day one, and they're going to be really loyal.
Yeah. Well, Todd, Thank you so much for coming on. I think it's really cool to hear your story and, just share with our audience your success and just the power of compound growth when it comes to a real estate portfolio. $7,000 to $15 million in equity. I know that's over a long period of time, but honestly,
still amazing.
It's a lot of
I mean, what is the return on investment right there?
I kind of I thought it'd be kind of fun to go put it in, but it's insane. So it's it's a lot. It's just put it in. And it's actually probably a little bit more than that, because one of the flips, when we pulled out some money, we bought a family home over on the canal that's, for $155,000, and then slowly over 20 years have renovated that, and that's worth somewhere around $1.5 million. So, there's another for a family home, that was just something that somebody didn't want. Cinder block, 4,000 square feet cinder block building, and my dad had a vision and slowly fixed up, and
Todd, I did the math on it, and it is a 210,000% return.
Yeah, it's insane.
210,000%.
Chris, what is that annualized though?
I mean, annualized, if you divide it by 45, that's a 47% return, 47.6% return annualized.
That's pretty
good. Here's the other thing. We kick off since 2012. We kicked off over $240,000 of positive cash flow.
Yeah.
Internal rate of return. What about when my dad was working? We did cost segregation. I mean, we don't have time to go into that now, right? But everybody asks you, how can you go increase my NOI? Well, I don't know. There's not a lot of new widgets in apartments, right? So what? We can raise our late fees. We can, charge higher, move out.
Yeah, there's some
just
fees
not a
you
lot
can
of stuff.
add.
There's nothing new. A vending machine. Yeah, but then you start looking like a used car salesman, add on it. For the dog, you got to go pay. It's like.
I love that analogy of the used car sales, man. I'm going to use that one with you, Chris.
Boy.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
But really appreciate you coming on and look forward to connecting. Let's grab lunch sometime.
Yeah, just let me know.
Yeah. So appreciate it.
If you ever want to go over.
It's always great being able to talk with someone in our market. So we typically interview people all over the nation, and as someone that's actually in our market is seldom, few and far between. So this is a special one for us.
Well, it was fun. I appreciate it. Thanks for allowing me to tell our story.
If our audience wants to get a hold of you or maybe learn some more, would you like to give some contact information or just a way to connect with you?
If some people want to get a hold of me, they could, it's Todd Locker, LOCKER @yahoo.com. My cell phone's 503-750-1812. I don't really typically work with a lot of clients because I try to keep that, I just don't need to do a lot of clients, but I will help. I'm pretty forthcoming with information and try to help people out.
Well, awesome.
Thank you. Thank you.
You guys take care.
You too, Todd. All right. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Real Estate Professionals Investing Podcast on WIN, your community of investing knowledge for growth. We hope that this episode has increased your knowledge and added value to your path to freedom. If you would, please take a second to rate us so that we can get more great investors to interview. If you or someone that you know wants to be on, please visit westsideinvestors.com and fill out our form to be on the show. Thank you again and enjoy your day.